And if this is your first time giving your mind a little love, I have a few goodies for you. First, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And second, sign up for the Morning Mind Love. Think of it like a weekday oracle from your highest self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, you'll get 2 gifts absolutely free: a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up. Welcome to Mind Love, episode 307. Today's episode is all about breaking through mental barriers and tapping into purpose through EFT.
What I did there is I did a pattern interrupt. And what that does is it helps your brain to switch and change faster. And a pattern interrupt will interrupt literally the pattern or the loop that you're experiencing to not allow you to continue going down that neural network highway to that problem. And then your brain can't play it anymore. It's basically like scratching a disc. And what happens in the brain, if you're tapping or if you're doing a pattern interrupt, is there's protein bonds that hold neurons together. And when you interrupt the synapses, the process that's going through it, they actually begin to melt and break away. And then they literally begin to make new pathways. So those will just break apart and then new ones will begin to form.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
Hello, Mind Love listeners. If you are ready to upgrade your mindset, hit that subscribe button. Each episode is meant to be a step in your journey to open your mind, shift your perspective, and find some peace in our chaotic world. And as always, your support means the world to me. So if you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you're always up to date on new episodes. So let's keep spreading the love together. Have you ever found yourself caught in the same loop, repeating the same patterns or thoughts? The same emotional blocks and self-doubt replaying like a broken record, no matter how hard you try to change the tune? Most of us are stuck in this rhythm. We live in a world where chaos seems to rule, and negative self-talk just becomes second nature. It's life as we know it, the status quo. But here's the thing. The status quo isn't enough anymore. What if you could live your life free of those limiting thoughts, feeling into your limitless potential? And what if the key to unlocking this freedom is literally at your fingertips? Today, we're diving into the transformative power of EFT, aka the Emotional Freedom Technique, also aka tapping. It's been called acupuncture without needles, and it's based on a combination of ancient Chinese acupuncture and modern psychology. The goal is to help us rewrite our own narratives with just the power of touch and intention. So the basic premise is, by stimulating meridian points on your body with your fingertips, points that are typically targeted in acupuncture, you can reduce the emotional impact of past events, decrease stress, and even rewire your brain's reactions. And no, it's not magic. It's science, and it's grounded in the same principles that have been used for thousands of years in traditional Eastern healing practices. Our bodies and minds are deeply interconnected. Negative emotions and past traumas aren't just stored in our minds. They can actually be trapped in our bodies too. We actually just did an episode on stuck emotions in episode 285, so check that out for more information. Well, this is where tapping comes in. It helps to release these trapped emotions and limiting beliefs, and in doing so, opens you up to healing, transformation, and personal growth. I was first introduced to EFT back in 2019. And actually, episode 77 of Mind Love is all about it. But now we're revisiting EFT with a fresh perspective and 4 more years of growth under our belts. And I'm really excited to be introducing a good friend of mine, Valerie Greene. She's walked this path and she credits EFT for saving her life. Not only did she come out stronger, but now she helps others break through their stuck energy. With her roots in working closely with the U.S. military community, she's empowered more than 3,000 people to chart their own paths of personal growth. And for our Mind Love members, we have a special treat in store. This month's membership masterclass is an immersive 5-part video series designed to help you bring the power of tapping into your own lives. You can find out more at mindlove.com/membership. But in this episode, 3 key things we will learn are: What happens when we let a void replace our sense of purpose? And more importantly, what we can do to not just fill, but fulfill this space. How to get clear on the inner narratives that are holding stuck energy. And a journey into the heart of tapping. When you're growing a business, most people think the hardest part is getting clients or making money. But I think it's finding people who actually care about the work as much as you do. And I've been there. I've posted a job, got 100 applications, and maybe 3 of them actually read the job description. And it's kind of soul crushing when you're trying to build something that actually matters. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen by other job sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so that you can reach the people you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it just makes hiring so fast because you're reaching people who actually are looking for work, not just casually browsing. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. And guess how fast it is? In the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/mindlove. Just go to Indeed.com/mindlove right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/mindlove. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. I used to be one of those people who had grand plans for a big healthy meal every Sunday night, and I'd make these elaborate meal plans, buy all the ingredients, and then Wednesday would roll around and I'd be staring at that wilted spinach, ordering takeout again. Shopping, planning, and cooking food really can be simple and stress-free, and that's why I love Hungry Root. Hungry Root takes stress out of mealtime by filling your cart with personalized picks and planning your week of meals, getting smarter with every order. With over 15,000 recipes to choose from each week, many ready in just 15 minutes or less, it's so perfect for those nights when you have no energy left. What I love most is their smart cart technology. It actually learns what I like and what I will actually cook. So no more buying ingredients for recipes that I'll never make. Everything that shows up, I actually use. They screen out over 200 additives, including high fructose corn syrup and artificial sweeteners, only high quality meat and seafood with no hormones or antibiotics, and they carry brands like Vital Farms and Ithaca hummus that I already trust. The time I've gotten back has been incredible. Instead of spending Sunday meal planning, I'm doing things that actually matter to me. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/mindlove and use code mindlove. That's hungryroot.com/mindlove, code mindlove, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/mindlove, code mindlove. And now let's welcome Valerie Greene to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. I'm excited to be here.
So you're a friend of mine, and what I've been so inspired by your journey is you're in a completely different place than when I met you. You're doing something totally different. You're literally in a completely different place. And so I know that there's so many listeners out there where I bring somebody on and it's like this big name. And so the gap from where that person is to where the person that I'm speaking to is, it just seems like, it may or may not ever be something that people can achieve. And so I love to kind of find those stepping stones in between of people that are really living their purpose, but it's not so far out there in the future. So tell us about how you discovered the power of EFT and what you're doing now.
So I came to discover the power of EFT kind of for my own needs, based on my own needs, because I had my own problems. And I guess I would go all the way back to college, and I was already kind of struggling with low self-worth and different childhood experiences. But I was actually in a really emotionally and physically abusive relationship for over 4 years. And it wasn't until I moved away to Germany in 2011 that I really kind of escaped that. And I think at that point, I thought by physically moving to a completely new location, like even completely different continent, that I'd be able to leave all of the trauma behind. But that wasn't necessarily the case. I had so much fun traveling the world, and I had the honor of working with the US military, but kind of subconsciously, I was avoiding the pain. And it was kind of showing up of I was kind of numbing, and I was struggling with alcohol, and my relationships were suffering. And so I just had never really dealt with it until I turned 30. And everything kind of, I would say, crashing down a bit. I was 30 and I looked around at everybody in my life that seemingly had everything together, that they had these careers and these relationships and babies. And I really just began to spin out of control. And that was then in 2018 when I was living in LA, actually, when you and I met, that it got even worse, that I had lost my job and I was sleeping on my sister's couch. And I just basically felt like I didn't have a purpose anymore. That's really dangerous thinking. And I really, really hit rock bottom. And I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, PTSD. I was experiencing flashbacks and pretty much night terrors, panic attacks, and chaotic thinking. My body was even speaking out. I had migraines and pain all over my body. And I remember at times I'd scream in the mirror, "I hate you." And didn't want to live anymore. I was suicidal. And I was self-harming. And it got so bad that I ended up in the hospital. And I started working with a therapist. And I began to feel okay. I felt better. But I definitely still had a lot of the same symptoms. And I just knew that there had to be a better way. There had to be a better way of just feeling okay. And so I started working with an EFT practitioner where we really started to address the underlying trauma. And, after working with her, I gained control over my mind. I healed my past. I basically developed a whole new mindset, and I learned to truly love and accept myself. And I just learned how to change my mind through this powerful technique, EFT, and the power of the mind. And I can now say that I truly love myself, and I love helping my clients be able to do the same thing through this amazing technique to get unstuck, to discover what they're really wanting, and to love themselves. So I can honestly say that EFT saved my life. And just a kind of a motto that I have is like, if I can do it, so can you.
It is interesting because you don't never really know what's going on with somebody underneath. And I think it took us hanging out deeply a couple times, and then you would let out a few things that you were struggling with, but not really the depths of it until you were on the other side. And so it's funny when we look around you mentioned, looking around at that age and seeing all of these people with great careers and families and whatever. And it just makes you wonder what's going on underneath with everybody, because it's never perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you kind of say that, because I just was feeling so much shame as well of not really feeling comfortable really telling people where I was. And it really did take the therapist telling me that it's okay, the feelings that I'm having, and really validating that.
I think that's part of my feelings about LA. There's these aspects of LA that I absolutely loved. Like, I loved being around people that were doing awesome things, like I remember somebody saying something about they had moved away and they came back and they're like, "I just miss LA. Like, you go to the bar and the bartender's also a producer and working on this movie and doing this." It's like, you go to the bar in Minnesota or wherever they were at, and it's like, they're just a bartender. But at the same time, there's so much of the keeping up with the Joneses. There's so much of seeing, other people's styles, businesses, incomes. It was something that got to me too, actually. Moving away to Big Bear, one of the things that I found really freeing was I found myself able to be more vulnerable than I was with people in LA.
No, I can definitely see that. I mean, I was definitely comparing myself, and I felt like I just didn't have a career. I didn't have anything going for me at that time, and I was struggling to really restart. I mean, I had a completely different career in Germany. And then when I moved to LA, I was just really just trying to figure it out. And it was really difficult. And there was definitely a lot of that comparison going on.
You said how you went to therapy first. What was the difference in the process? Why was EFT so much more effective for you than therapy? And what do you think the therapy was missing?
I knew you'd always ask me these good questions. So I think with the therapy, it was definitely that first step because I was so deep in sadness. Like it was very dangerous. And I think I needed to go to a licensed professional first. And I think by going to her first, I really helped to validate some of those feelings because it was really one of the first times I'd actually spoken about some of the things that I had experienced in my childhood and in college and just really bringing it to surface. But I think some of the things that I didn't like was the constant diagnosis that I was getting. And I felt just personally was just keeping me more stuck because I'm typically this really optimistic person. And I knew it was my thoughts. Like I knew it was just like, if only I could get control of these thoughts. And that was the part that actually really drove it. It was the chaotic thinking. It was like, I had like a wheel going, just calling myself all of these nasty things. And that wasn't stopping no matter how much I talked about it. And I learned later that was where EFT came in. EFT really helps to stop that part in your brain because the part that's traumatized is actually nonverbal. And so when I was working with the EFT practitioner, we were really addressing those deeper hurts, those memories that were so traumatizing.
And so how does that work exactly? Like, how does EFT get to the deeper parts? Is it when I did a session with you, one thing that I found really helpful, even without the tapping part of it, was the way that it guides me into a new narrative. And I think that's something for me that therapy was missing. And again, there have been times where therapy's been helpful. There have been times where it hasn't been. And a lot of times it's the therapist, a lot of times it's the place, or it's the way what I need or how I'm viewing things or whatever. But what I always find really helpful is when I'm creating the new narrative is that a lot of times I'll get to something and my mind hits the resistance at that part. You know, maybe I go back into my victim story or I go back into, but this just hurts, or I can't really see the through path. And so even just that part alone of sort of being guided by the practitioner to move through something where I can feel myself sort of hitting that wall, but instead it's like somebody else says something, you know, you said something at that moment. I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. Just walk right through that doorway. And then it's like, oh, now the door's open. I can walk through that again later on. And so what is actually happening with what does the tapping add on top of that already kind of important layer of creating that door to open? What does the tapping add on top of that already kind of important layer of creating that door to open?
You actually hit on the biggest part of actually changing the beliefs. So when you're tapping on the different meridian points, and what it's doing is it is sending a signal to the part of your brain called the amygdala, which is in charge of your fight or flight. And as you're tapping, it's sending this relaxing signal. So it's decreasing cortisol and increasing serotonin, which is causing you to relax. But as you're recalling something traumatic, but you're telling your brain that you're actually safe, it sends this contradicting signal to your brain and actually releases those heavy emotions that you're experiencing. What also ends up happening when you're tapping, you're releasing those heavy emotions. And then what happens is you can actually form a new perception. It's like, hold on, with no longer having those heavy emotions in charge, it's like, wait, hold on. I really was doing the best that I could at that time. And I'm actually safe right now. It's not happening anymore. And your brain is actually able to flip the belief and take on new information. That's really what's going on with new perceptions as well.
So when you were discovering the power of tapping, what stage was that? Was that right before you moved back to Germany or after?
That was after I moved back to Germany. So got that serious in LA that I needed to move. It wasn't LA itself. It was just kind of this perfect storm because prior to even moving to LA, I had a significant loss in my family. So it was like a major loss. It was a big move. I was separated from my boyfriend at the time, now husband. And so it was all of these major stressors. And then I lost my job. So it's kind of this perfect storm. And then also never dealing with any of my past trauma. So it wasn't just LA, it was this perfect storm. So then I did move back to Germany. And once I kind of got to Germany and I was in a safe space, and that's also really key when you're working with the subconscious mind, to feel safe, to be in a safer environment. And that's when I started working with an EFT practitioner. I switched from working with a therapist with a practitioner. And sometimes it's good to work in cadence. I mean, even personally, when I work with clients, sometimes they've worked with a therapist for 10, 20, 30 years, and then they work with me and they're able to release things that they've been working on for so long. Or, they'll continue kind of working with them, just because of rapport and, they're just getting different things.
I think that's another aspect of your story that I love so much is we are always given these guidelines or almost rules for how to heal, it feels like, from outside forces. And one of those, for example, is like you hear it a lot in 12-step programs where it's like, well, now is not the time to date, or put all of this on hold because you're healing this. That has never been my case of my own personal healing. It's always been alongside of real life, still struggling while with something big, while meeting my husband and falling in love, still struggling, and I think it's such an important thing to shed light on, because the amount of people that have reached out to me and they feel like they're doing their healing wrong because, they're not willing to put their relationship on hold, or they're still open to this idea of moving. And they're like, am I running away? No, I have to stay right here, and I have to cut out men or women, or I have to do this. But during that time, you got engaged, you moved across the country, and you still had room, to say, like, these things are what I need right now. They're not necessarily fixing every issue. And then there's still work to be done, and I can do it at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really think there's any right or wrong journey. It's like I worked with a therapist, and then I worked with a EFT practitioner, and I'm married, and I went back to a therapist because I'm in an intercultural relationship. And we still kind of like bump our heads a little bit. He's very German. So, I mean, I think we're constantly in these different stages of healing and growing. And I think I just think the most important thing is just to be kind to ourselves and to accept where we're at, and that's okay, and to start from there.
So what I'm also really impressed about is you starting your business around this. Like, it's something that was meaningful for you. And so you chose to make it your purpose. And you said earlier that at one point you found yourself in this state where you didn't feel like you had a purpose anymore, and that's dangerous thinking. But you said you had the word anymore in there. So you at least felt purposeful before, but there's a lot of people out there that have never connected to that purpose at all. When do you consider that being kind of a dangerous thing? And how did you start to connect, hey, this healing, this thing that really worked for me might be the path I want to go into?
It reminds me of this book, and I can't think of the name of it. And it was something about like the search for meaning. And it really talks about that, of when we feel like we don't have a purpose, or our life doesn't serve a purpose, is when that gets really dangerous, because then we're no longer looking towards anything. And then it's just almost like this darkness. And I don't know if it's not like I knew what I wanted to do. Like, I just felt like I was living life, and I was traveling, and I was having fun. I enjoyed my 20s, but I also really enjoyed the skill sets that I learned while working with the U.S. military, because I'd been a coach ever since working with them. But I think sometimes your purpose goes through almost like the dark night of the soul, like when you're on the other side. And I think sometimes our purpose, just at the deepest level, is to just love and be loved, period. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. I think our purpose can be a really loving mom, to be a good partner, to be a good, if we're doctors or a firefighter, like whatever it is. Like, I just think it's just truly at the core of just to love and be loved. And I think sometimes that can be lost, that when we're born pure love. We love everything. We love ourselves so much that we put our feet in our mouth, right, as babies. And it's kind of conditioned out of us. And I think that when we can get back to that root of just pure love and loving ourselves and loving one another, that is a true purpose. And how you can show up in that is, I think, is individual.
For sure. I I went through a lot of confusion around the idea of purpose. I mean, that search ended, well, it's never ending, but it led me right to mind love. But what I've grown to understand is that purpose is not always connected to career at all. It's more about this energy that you carry with every day. Do you feel purposeful? Do you feel like you're here for a reason? And it doesn't really matter what that reason is. It doesn't even have to be the same every single day. It's just that you have to feel valued, whether even if it's just you valuing yourself and your own life. Your life has value, and to really know that intrinsically. And so one of the things that I have been really exploring lately with my coaching clients has been the idea of finding that even before you find the career, because you know how you create that energy from the inside, and then more things tend to follow up. It's like, now I feel purposeful, and now a purpose found me. I think that's what started to happen without me even realizing it when I found the idea for Mind Love. I actually started getting really lit up by learning again and diving into these parts of my psyche and my mind and progress and growth. And I wasn't expecting Mind Love to be a career. It was going to be a side hobby. I had a different career that made money. But in that, it's like I found this flow that I was so excited to run towards, that then that aspect of the purpose ended up finding me.
I mean, I remember meeting you around that time. I mean, I think you definitely had already had your podcast off the ground. I'm not sure exactly how many episodes, but it was still really fresh. And I could feel that off of you. I could really feel that you were in that, and you're really in that flow. And it was kind of contagious. It was like, wow, I want that. I really want to find that for myself. And you just kind of eluded that wherever you went. And I just remember even when we go to those quilt meetings that they're, the women's meetups groups and all the people there, and you were just really lit up and really loved talking about what you're doing as a podcaster. And I think you really hit it on the head of just kind of finding what lights you up, find out just what you're passionate about. And I think that can go really far back, even probably with people when we're kids. Like what made you excited? Like what did you find fun? What was playful and creative? And I think sometimes going back to that is a good way of really finding our purpose. And I love how you even said diving into the knowledge, because I really, really feel that with what I do. I'm such like a student of the mind now. I feel like such a nerd. I love it. I love reading. I don't know if you see my bookshelf like behind me of all of the different books that I have read. A few I haven't yet. And yeah, I can totally kind of relate with that, if it's just really lighting you up.
And so what was that interim like? So you found EFT, it made these huge transformations for you. And now you've actually found a lot of success in your coaching practice, which is amazing, because you're like, okay, now I'm living in Germany. What am I going to do over here? Like that's one good thing about, I know a lot of people that are sort of in that interim where they're like, I kind of hate my job, but I don't want to leave because this is what security is. And they can even lose their job and lose the next opportunity. And they still somehow are identifying that with security. It was funny because I was just talking to my husband, Shane, and we were talking about one particular instance. And I'm like, I just feel like this person has everything that it would take to create something successful on her own. And he goes, yeah, but remember, sometimes to start your own thing, you have to be a lunatic. like it's not the normal path that people take, like this is not how most people think. And for me, I ended up marrying somebody who was already doing his own thing. I ended up being in LA where so many people were doing their own thing, kind of surrounded by it. So I was surrounded by this new possible path, versus if I would have been in my hometown that I grew up in, I don't know if I would have ever taken that step, because it wasn't shown to me enough for it to really feel possible. And so what were those first steps like for you? Were you just kind of gauging research, seeing if you could do this? How did you start?
So very quickly after working with my practitioner, how fast it worked, I was like, I have to do this. Like, I want to do this. This is just phenomenal. So then I got trained. And then my coach actually also mentored me. And at that time I just kind of went all in. And I think I was really, really lucky that the man that I'm married to is a tax guy. So he was helpful in setting up my company. He's actually the CFO of my company, that if I didn't have him, it would have been a lot more challenging, I'd have to say. So I honestly, there really wasn't this like trying to figure it out. It was like, this is it. This is just so powerful. This is what I want to do. And I just felt like it connected so many pieces of my past. It connected in already being a coach. It connected in kind of already being a healer as a Reiki master. It connected in, I already knew a lot about the mind and body as a yoga instructor and being a holistic nutritionist. Like, it really pulled in everything and all the knowledge that I already had and just began to build upon it. It's like, oh, wow, a lot of this makes sense.
So what about feelings of imposter syndrome? Because that is what I feel like most people, I mean, I still even struggle with that at different times. And especially earlier on, before you have like the evidence of the transformations of your clients and things like that, I know that a lot of people reach out to me and they're like, yeah, I want to do this thing, but who am I to do it? You know?
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel that? And how did you work through it?
Yeah, I think I definitely felt that in the very, very beginning, maybe with my first clients when I was like training. But I mean, there was a lot of training done with free clients, like friends and family, people that kind of would send me their friends and family. So then I could kind of practice. And it was just kind of second nature almost, of how quickly I picked it up and how quickly I was really able to help people shift. So yes, I definitely had it in the beginning. I think I felt it when I really started charging, because I was starting to ask for money to do something like this. And I was like, okay, well, where is that price point at? And then now I've been doing it for so long, it's just like, I don't even think about it. It's like, this is the value that I bring. So I think it started there more or less than anywhere else.
And so did you just pretend like that resistance wasn't coming up, or did you EFT your way through it?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. I knew the power and I was confident in myself. And I remember a conversation I had with like my husband, like way back in the very beginning. He's like, you know what, babe, worst case, you give him a refund. Or worst case, you say, hey, I don't feel like I did my best. I'm gonna offer you an extra session or something like that, or half off your next one. He's like, they're never really gonna know. It's like, and I'm holding myself to a really high standard. And I mean, thankfully that didn't happen, and they've been really excellent sessions and just kind of build upon itself.
So compared to where you were when you first moved to Germany and you were still sort of figuring things out, you had some happiness because you were engaged at that point, but then you basically had a whole transformation. But I remember in the beginning, actually, because you had come back from Germany when I met you, and you were in LA and you were going through this really hard time of like, I don't know if I want to be in Germany. Like, it was hard being in Germany, being, not even speaking complete fluent German yet, all of those things, and that isolation. And so has it mostly been EFT that's helped you sort of transform your experience there, or what else has changed? Has it mostly been EFT that's helped you sort of transform your experience there, or what else has changed?
So I will say, I honestly have had to just accept that as being part of my life. Like, I have chosen to live in a country that's not my own. Like, I've had to really learn to accept that. And that is the decision I've made. And I think sometimes when you can give it more acceptance, it gives it more space to breathe. And originally, so I guess my whole path in Germany has been really different. Like, I first moved over here, I was working with the US military, and then I changed jobs and I moved down to a completely different part of Germany. And then that's where I was for a long time. And then my job ended. And that's where it was the most difficult in Germany, not having something for myself. And then even as I was progressing and getting older, it was really hard to kind of get into this German system. So I kind of had no other choice but to start something of my own. And it just serendipitously or whatever it took led me to what I do now.
I was just refreshing myself on information from Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way. And he talks about how, sometimes it's that challenge. If it wasn't for that challenge, we wouldn't be forced to see things differently. And that's how I feel with my past. That's what I say about, the darkest part of my life, being thrown in jail
Mm-hmm.
for somebody else's crime, having a felony
Mm-hmm.
that my unearned felony is what I call it.
Oh.
It's just like this thing that I remember sitting in a jail cell feeling like my life is ruined. I cannot press the reset button on this. And it
Mm.
wasn't very long after that. It was, I'd say I wallowed for a little bit, but then I was like, what do I do now? First of all, I need to move out of this town so that this person can't find me. Second of all, like, what am I going to do? Because I can't write this crazy story on 2 lines of a job application. And so I realized that I needed to start my own thing. And I'm so glad, because I'm the type of person where I likely would have, fallen into a good job. I even did a couple years later, but it was a startup. And so it felt kind of entrepreneurial. But I spent a year deeply studying internet marketing and how to start a business. And so I surrounded myself with that possibility. And I always call that felony my slingshot toward entrepreneurship, because it forced me to come up with new ideas, to see there was one path of possibility. It felt like all the other options were closed off, and I could have sat there banging on all of the doors, crying, wondering why they don't open, or I could just walk through the one that is open.
Right. Wow. Well, that's really powerful. That's really amazing how that's kind of like your story. And yeah, I just feel like with mine, it's I still kind of struggle with it. So I'm still walking through that door, and I think it's just going to be part of the life I chose. And it thankfully has opened up a lot of different doors. And I think it allows me to work with so many different people as well. And I mean, just even the entrepreneurial aspect of just having a company in a foreign country and the German taxes, I mean, that'll teach you a lot.
It's any country's taxes more confusing than America's, or no?
Germans, definitely.
I feel like Germans are just confusing in general. They talk to me and I'm like, you feel conflicted. And they're like, this is just my language. I was just talking to Danielle Laporte, and we were talking about resistance. And she had this line in her new book, How to Be Loving, that says, it's talking about accepting all parts of yourself in your life. But she says, accept even your resistance. And I loved that, because so often we're like, I'm either accepting or I'm resisting. And when we feel ourselves resisting, we can almost feel like, I'm doing it wrong, or I'm self-rejecting in some way, or I'm making this harder on myself. But it's like, that resistance is such a human part of ourselves. I still have it all the time. I live in this beautiful town that sometimes I drive through and I'm like, it looks like this fake Hallmark movie town. I can't believe I live here. This is awesome. And then other times I'm like, why can't I get Uber Eats? Why does all the food have seed oils in it? There's no healthy options. They don't even have raw milk at the grocery store. And I'm like railing about it. Like, I hate it here. And then the next day I'm like, I love it. But I've gone through such periods of time of like almost beating myself up for those things. Like, why do you still get low about that? Why do you still allow that to penetrate? And there's something about the idea of like, accept even your resistance. And it's like, you know what? My inner child is throwing a fit right now. And she just wants to be seen. Like, just see her, be like, okay, little Melissa. Yeah. Yeah, the seed oils suck, but you'll find something to eat and everything will be okay. And then I'm just able to kind of move through it, knowing that I kind of hate it at this moment.
I think that's so key, of just kind of holding space for that resistance, just kind of allowing it to be there, allowing yourself to just feel the emotions that come up. And it's kind of key that you brought up just like even your inner child, because sometimes they just want to have a tantrum and they just want to be heard. It's like, okay, what is it that you really need? All right, I'm listening. I hear you. So they're just trying to tell you kind of those unmet needs. And if you just kind of listen, it will ease and it can pass so much quicker.
So when things come up for you now, are you able to do you go see a practitioner, or do you do like a self EFT session? How do you work through it using your craft?
So now I definitely work through it myself, which is pretty amazing. I can kind of just do my own session. I'll sit down with myself. It's like, okay, what's kind of coming up? And the resistance will typically bring up an emotion. So, okay, well, what emotion am I feeling? Where am I feeling that in my body? And then typically a limiting belief will come up and maybe a few memories, and I'll work through those. And it's actually really, really empowering to be able to do that for myself and shift out of it rather quickly. I do give myself kind of that space to kind of feel it first, and then I'll shift out of it.
And so an emotion comes up, and you say you give yourself space to feel it first. So do you just sit with it? How do you take time with that emotion?
I mean, it's just, I'll hear it. It's just like, okay, they're feeling a little bit of resistance. I'm feeling a little bit of deep sadness. Okay, where's that really coming from? Where am I feeling that in my body? And then I'll just really give it a few moments, and then I'll tap.
And so when the limiting belief comes up, what I find is that a lot of people that have not done work with limiting beliefs before, something comes up and they're ready to deny it before they're ready to accept it and work with it. Because a lot of times it does sound so simple, or it's like, really, that's the thing that's getting me right now, that this kid in middle school called me fat, or like that, I just don't want to do this thing. And so how do you know that what's coming up is the thing that's meant to be worked with?
I just kind of trust the process. I just allow the subconscious. I'm going to even do this in sessions. I just really let the subconscious lead me by the questions that I'm asking. Like, it's almost, when was the very first time I felt that way? Or when did I first believe that? And those are some of those key questions I ask my clients. And typically those memories that are ready to be released are the ones that will arise. And I don't ever force people to, or even myself, if I'm not ready to work on something.
Another thing that I found notable when I was doing a session with you was that I remember we were walking through something. I started getting emotional, and I was attaching to the story all of a sudden. And you just, I can't remember exactly what you said, but you like made a joke and kind of like moved on through or something like that. Tell me what your process was.
Oh, so in session, I make it very clear it's very different than talk therapy, and I will be interrupting you. And what that does is it helps your brain to switch and change faster. So what I did there is I did a pattern interrupt, because my job in sessions versus when I'm doing sessions with myself, like with myself, I'll just kind of do it but in sessions, it's my job to not allow you to continue going down that neural network highway to that problem. And so I'll pattern interrupt it. And a pattern interrupt will interrupt literally the pattern or the loop that you're experiencing, and then your brain can't play it anymore. It's basically like scratching a disc. So that's basically what I did by you were beginning to go in what's called a trance. You were going into a trance, and so I interrupted it. So then you couldn't make it go any further. It's really similar if we're having like a conversation and say someone were to like walk in and you're like, oh, well, what was I just talking about? It's very similar to that. Actually, that's exactly what it is.
And that's so helpful, because the analogy that if listeners have been listening long enough, they've probably heard this 100 times, but I just love it because it's such a good visual of like, walking through the forest and you go down the same path and it's this well-trodden path the whole time. And the moment you try to do another one, it's going to be dark and scary. It's not really a path. You don't know where you're going. There's bats and bugs and whatever, but then you go down again, and then you go down again. And eventually the path is just as trodden as the other one, and it becomes just as easy to go down. And so it's like, at that moment, I felt like you were like kicking me over. Like, no, go down the bat path,
I hope there's a lot gentler than that. But yeah, basically what we're doing is we're covering up the old one. So I'm interrupting it almost to the point that you will not be able to go down that old, well-paved path. And the new one will be completely newly paved. Well, there's a lot of paved path.
Paved path.
But so that's what we're basically doing, is we're just kind of interrupting it. And what happens actually, even in the brain, so even if you're tapping or if you're doing a pattern interrupt, is there's different bonds that they're protein bonds that hold neurons together. And when you interrupt the synapses, the process that's going through it, they actually begin to melt and break away. And then they literally begin to make new pathways. So those will just break apart and then new ones will begin to form.
That's pretty fascinating. I love bringing things back to the brain science, but especially when there's like actually a physical thing, because so often we're like, oh yeah, this cool brain analogy. But I'm wondering, do you use that same pattern interrupt? Do you ever find yourself using it just practically, like in your day to day? Like, say you're driving and you can feel yourself going down a story. Do you snap yourself out of it because you know how the brain works?
Yeah, I have a fart app on my phone. I use it in session on myself, like on my husband sometimes, family members. It's just like, it'll play just like a fart out of nowhere. And most people love a good fart joke. So, I mean, I'll usually do that, or I have some good like dad jokes, or music is great as a really upbeat pattern interrupt. So if you're ever just not feeling good, you can always put on a really good song, and even just physically moving your body will help to interrupt that.
Yeah, I always think about when I'm in a dark place, I don't have the fart app yet, so clearly I'm missing out, but but I will do anything to kind of change my internal body chemistry. It's like whether I yell or sing or move or run. Sometimes I'll just like sprint, although I haven't been able to do that in several months because of this belly.
Aww.
But we've talked a lot about, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say another really easy one. I don't know how appropriate a fart app is wherever you're at, but sometimes what you can do is you can even just say no or stop or cancel out loud, and then just start speaking out loud. So if you're thinking some things, that's called auditory digital, and if you just start speaking out loud, that will also begin to break that as well. Because when we're thinking in our minds, it's using so much more neural network pathways versus when we're speaking. There's less of them. So usually what I'll recommend is somebody say no, stop, or cancel, and then just start saying what you're doing. Oh, I'm driving in my car and I'm going to turn on the radio. I'm going to turn a left right here. And that will help to interrupt that as well.
Oh, I like that. Oh man, that takes me back to like 10 years ago. Somebody told me, I can't remember what it spawned from, but I had this like 1 month habit of going, nope, delete, and then just moving on. But I forgot where or why that came from. And thank you for bringing it
liar,
back.
Liar.
Maybe like
delete it.
delete. There was some hand motion, but I'm going to bring it back. But we've talked a lot about the kind of working with past traumas or stories that we're telling ourselves. How do we use this to work with something like the law of attraction, or something that we're trying to create rather than something that we're trying to erase?
Oh, I love that. Yes. So EFT, I think, is paired with the law of attraction is unbeatable. The law of attraction is what we're thinking about, what we're speaking about, what you're focusing on, you're going to begin to create more of in your life, right? And how it works with EFT, or kind of like you were saying, of when you're wanting to reach for a certain goal, is with the law of attraction, you want to ask, right? You want to ask for something that you're wanting. And very much we have to kind of get clear on what it is that we're wanting. We're really good at saying what we don't want. So like I'll work with someone, it's like, okay, what do you want? It's like, well, I don't want to feel stressed out anymore, and I don't want to feel anxiety. And it's like, okay, hold on, I'm hearing what you don't want, but what do you want? So first it's getting really clear of like, oh, well, I want to feel more peace. I want to feel happier. I want to feel abundant. Whatever it is that you're actually wanting is kind of that first step of getting really clear, because the subconscious isn't hearing, I don't want to feel stress. It's hearing stress. So we're kind of flipping it first and foremost of really deciding what it is that you want. And then also you can make really big stretch goals. Like, I want to be a published author through Hay House, right? So just these really big stretch goals. And what can end up happening when you think of something really big or a goal, there's that resistance. That resistance rises because our subconscious doesn't really have a program for that. And so it wants to maintain the programs that's playing. So you have to kind of go after the core belief that's resisting against that. And also you have to believe it's possible. A lot of the reasons we don't go after what we want is, one, we don't believe it's possible. And two, we don't believe we're worthy of having it. And EFT goes after those roots of dreaming that it is possible, visualizing it happening, training the brain that it has already happened, because visualization, your brain doesn't know the difference between something real and imagined. So you can begin to train your brain that it is happening. And the main thing with the law of attraction, our main job with EFT, is to raise in vibration. That's really what it's about. And when you begin to raise in that vibration because you're believing it's possible, it begins to be attracted to you. So that's really what happens with EFT is you're releasing the heavy stuff and you're rising in vibration, you're rising in love, you're rising in appreciation. So then you can actually line up for what it's wanting. Because typically we're wanting something because we think we're going to feel better in the having of it. But if we feel better now, then we attract it. And actually when you get it, you're like, that was it. Because you're actually at the right vibration for it. So it's like those stages of like asking for what you're really, really wanting. And then you have to believe it's actually possible. And then you get into the receiving mode and raise your vibration in order for it to be attracted to you like a magnet.
I love that. I recently saw this video. I'm not going to say it was the most credible source. I'm pretty sure it was an Instagram video with the title Rastafarian Dropping Knowledge. But here's what he said. He was talking about how belief is a form of doubt. And he used the example. He's like, do you believe in your parents? No, you know your parents. And he's like, but do you believe in Jesus or whatever? And it's like, yeah, because you don't know him or whatever. And so I've been changing my words because this man dropped knowledge on my Instagram feed with like, because so much about what I've taught is like, oh, this, you're building a self-belief around this. And I find that it's really, really helped me. But I wonder what is possible now that I'm changing it to creating a self-knowing rather than a self-belief. Like, what does that feel like?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. This deep knowing that it's possible, this deep knowing that I am worthy and deserving of everything that I want. And it's only a matter of time until it arrives. And kind of, that's very much what people talk about with like just complete surrender also, right? It's like kind of just, oh, I know it's on its way. And even Abraham Hicks talks about like, I'm getting ready to get ready. Like just in that vibration of just this knowing and this belief and surrender, I think is really key.
And I think what comes up for me when, with all of those words that you just listed was like, surrender is one of those words that has taken me a long time to, I've developed different relationships with it depending on what stage I'm in. I'm like, what does this mean? To like, what do you mean just letting go? Somebody recently asked me what the difference between complacency and surrender was. And what keeps coming up for me, because there's been so many conversations and recently about the nervous system, and so I think that's really what it's about. Whereas with anything else, even with belief, there's like this sort of yearning there. With wanting, there's a yearning clearly. With desire, even there's a yearning. And yeah, there might be slightly different energies, maybe some a little higher than the others. But with surrender and acceptance and things like that, it's this full letting go. And I feel like that's what EFT can help you get to, because you're stimulating your nervous system. You're getting to this point of complete relaxation so that you can give yourself these messages that in this state, it's like that a different type of trance state where you're just completely receptive to what you're telling yourself, these new things that you're implanting into your mind.
100%. You said that really, really beautifully.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and being so vulnerable with your story. And I usually like to leave listeners with a practice, but you are blessing us with a Mind Love Masterclass. And so I'm going to leave the practice for there, because I cannot wait for you to share your gifts with everybody. It's going to be really good, really exciting. Everything I've ever seen you create has been awesome. So I can't wait to see what you bring there. So for listeners that are interested in learning more about you, possibly working with you, where's the best place for them to connect?
So they can connect with me either on Instagram. So my handle is Valerie Greene Coaching, VALERIEGREENE Coaching. And that's also the same for my website. So ValerieGreeneCoaching.com if you would like to book a one-on-one with me.
All the links for this episode will be at mindlove.com/307. Your challenge for this week is to try tapping yourself. And if you need someone to hold your hand through it, you want to follow something more step by step to guide you through the process rather than just taking notes from the episode, that's exactly what this month's membership masterclass is for. You can find out more at mindlove.com/membership. What I love about tapping is that it's a reminder of just how much power that we literally have at our fingertips. Our energy meridians have been used for thousands of years for healing. And as much as a part of your mind wants to tell you that it's woo-woo or that there's no basis for it, think of how even those seasick bands work. They touch on specific pressure points that help relieve nausea, and there's tons of science behind it. I know we have a lot of deprogramming that we have to do because we are run by a capitalistic society and big pharma, and so it wants to tell you that you actually have to purchase a band rather than just pressing on it yourself, or you have to purchase this thing rather than just trying it at home. But remember, everything that we need is already inside of us. And I know that's a really difficult idea to grasp, but the more I dive deep into spirituality, the more that just becomes truth for me. But regardless of how deep you want to dive into that idea, at least consider that you have the power to heal. You have the power to step forward. You don't have to stay stuck in the same loop that you've always been in. And I know if you've been there a long time, that almost seems impossible, but I hope this is what you're taking away from Mind Love, from listening week after week. You are more powerful than you think you are. Just let that sit for a second. You are more powerful than you believe yourself to be. Even if you've been doing this a while, you are even more powerful than that. So check out the membership at mindlove.com/membership. You also get a ton of masterclasses from every month of this year. Sometimes we had 2 masterclasses per month. Plus you get a backlog of over 100 exclusive episodes just for Mind Love members. You can find all of my sponsors at mindlove.com/sponsors. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.